What's up, friends? Welcome to a new video. Today's going to be really exciting because I'm going to show you how to use your own voice to create some awesome sound effects that you can use in your videos. It'll sound a little bit like this. All right, so that is so much fun, but before this video starts, I want to let you know that I'm working on a giant pack that has tons of sound effects for you. It's going to be using your voice only. So if you guys click the link in the description down below, that will help me out because what I'm asking of is for you to record your own voice and then send me the file so I can mess around with it and make some cool effects. All you have to do is like record a minute or like 2 minutes of your voice. If you have a super nice mic, that would be awesome. But if you don't have a crazy mic, still send me that because I can use that for distorted effects here and there, and I can chop it up and make some crazy stuff happen. So click the link in the description down below and please send me your audio files so that we can make this pack huge. I'll probably release it in about a month or so. Without further ado, let's jump on into this tutorial. So now that we're in our Audition, we're going to start by going to File, select New, and then create a multi-track session. You can name this whatever you want. Once you create that multi-track session, we're going to arm our first track by clicking the R and then change our input to mono and then choose your microphone. Once we have this selected, we can start recording our audio. So first, I'm going to do a simple whoosh or whatever you want to call those. Ready? All I'm doing to create these sound effects are blowing into my microphone, breathing in, doing little things here and there to see what I can create. Now, you'll see right away that if I drag this down, these sound waves are really small. So if you double click on your recorded file, you'll see this little box up here. You can drag this to the right and that will increase the decibels of your recording. You can also increase them. I would just increase them to around -6 over here. And then let's go back to multi-track at the top left and then look at our track. You'll notice that it highlights everything. You can select G to unselect that. What I like to do now is chop up these sound effects into their individual files by selecting R. That is the razor tool, and you can use that to cut your track. You can just drag them down to any track, and then on your track, make sure you select your track, and then over here on the left-hand side, you'll see an effects rack. Typically, I just play around with the presets. For example, I'm kind of looking for a really reverby, punchy sound. So for this one, I'm going to go to Far Away Source, and then give that a listen. That is perfect. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And now the other thing that you'll have to play around with is the pitch. So selecting on your track, you can go over here and in any of these available spaces, click the arrow key and then go to time and pitch and go to pitch shifter. What I'm going to do is start by just changing my semitones to -12, making sure high precision and use appropriate default settings is selected. And let's give that a listen. So that sounds incredible. And that is kind of like what the sound I'm looking for. So you'll have to keep playing around with this. And then the final step when you are creating your sound effects is to select this little box over here to fade in your sound and then also fade out your sound. I found that it always works best when it's at the peak. Now, keep in mind that you can also hold Alt and duplicate your layer and then apply a different effect onto your sound effect because you might get something cool. Like what if we try radio announcer? So that kind of gives it a little bit more volume. So now you can do the same thing with these effects. And the cool thing is once you create the effect that you like the sound of, you can put all your whooshes in this track and then export that as a single track. So you can also rename your track if you want to keep organized. And then one final note on these whooshes are that if you want to actually play around with the speed of the whoosh and speed it up or slow it down, you can do that as well. Up here on the right-hand side, you'll see a little white arrow. You can drag that to speed it up. And you can also drag it to slow it down. Moving forward, let's record another section of this sound effect and then show you some tricks you can do with pitch bending. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to just with my lips. Ready? What I'm gonna do is drag this onto track 2 and then start playing with it. I'm gonna unsingle all these tracks and just single my track 2. So what I'm gonna do now is double click on it and then increase the decibels a little bit just so I can get a better sound wave. And then once I increase the decibels, what I'm gonna do is start at the beginning of my recording, click, and then I'm gonna drag to the right till it gets a little bit towards the end. And then what I'm gonna do is go to the effects up here, go down to time and pitch, and then go to pitch bender process. Once you select that, this dialog box will pop up, and I'm going to click on just winding up and then give that a listen. So that's kind of a buildup, and if you want, you can play around with these keyframes right here to get a certain effect that you want. And you can change the distance by just clicking and dragging if you want to do that as well. So let's try this. So that's like a buildup. You could also do a wind down. So turntable losing power will create this effect and slow it down. So you can definitely do that when you are doing some slow motion stuff, or just in general, if you wanted to do the default, you can add your own keyframes and slow this down as much as you want. Moving forward, let's do some other sound effects. Now this one's going to be glitches. So glitches are kind of funny when you record because it doesn't sound like glitches. You have to make them with effects. So the best way to do it is just kind of go crazy with your mouth and make pop noises, anything that you can think of that would sound glitchy. Ready? So that's always so funny to do because it's crazy when you actually think about it. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag this down to track 4 and then single out this track. And then again, I'm gonna double click on my audio and then drag it up a little bit so I get a better decibel reading. Now what I'm gonna do is go into the presets and then start playing around with it. So I'm gonna throw on Sonic Destructor in the effects panel and see what that does. So we're starting to get somewhere, but I think I really need to pitch this up. So I'm gonna select that arrow in the effects rack and then add time and pitch shifter. And then I'm gonna drag my semitones all the way up to 12 and then give this a listen. So we're starting to get somewhere, but I wanna make the precision low, and then I'm gonna uncheck use appropriate default settings, and I'm gonna change my splicing frequency all the way up to 500 and then overlapping all the way up to 50 as well. So let's go on to the arrow key on an open effects rack and then go to special and then click on distortion. I found that ultimate failure is some of my favorite ones to use. And then now what we can do is start to duplicate our layer and then see what we can do. One thing that you keep in mind that you can also duplicate it onto the layers that you've already made and see what sound effects you'll get. So with glitching, one thing that you'll always want to do is play around with the spacing of your glitches and how they are. Like, how does it sound when it's slower? What happens if you pitch this all the way down, etc., etc. So as you can see, I just pitched this bottom track down and left the settings at normal, and we already have an interesting effect. The final one I'm going to show you is a bass drop. So bass drops are fun. Just try to mimic a bass drop the best you can. And then we're going to make it sound better with effects. So this is what we're going to do. As you just heard, I just kind of made a fake bass drop. But what we're going to do is we're going to drag this onto track 2, and then I'm going to start manipulating it. So I'm going to single out my track, and then right away I'm going to double click on it and increase the decibels a little bit, just like so. Just so it's not clipping. I'm gonna hit G to deselect everything. So one thing I like to do with bass drops is actually do a turntable losing power effect. So I'm gonna double click on my audio clip and then just drag click and drag at the beginning and a little bit towards the end, and then go to the effects, and then go down to time and pitch, and then pitch bender process, and then select the preset and change that to turntable losing power. And let's give this a listen. So I'm realizing that it's maybe a little too long. So what I'm gonna do is drag this to the left, and then I'm gonna manipulate this keyframe right here to give it a more gradual fall off. So that's kind of the effect I was looking for. All you have to do is select apply and then go back to multi-track. And as you can see, we have our bass drop right here, but let's do some more magic. Hit one of the arrow keys on an open effects rack and then go to filter and EQ, and let's add a graphic equalizer. And I'm gonna boost this bass side up a little bit, drag down, I'm gonna lower my mids, and then I'm definitely going to lower these highs. So kind of like a little downhill slope. Let's give that a listen. So already we're getting a better bass drop, but let's also play around with the pitch. So go to time and pitch shifter, and let's drag our semitones to around 5 and see what that sounds like. So right there, we just added a bass drop, and remember to fade out your bass drop as well if you don't want it to clip at your end. So that's kind of the basics of how you create your own sound effects using Audition. Keep playing around with different effects and seeing what they do, because there are so many different effects that I didn't even touch on. But I'm excited to see what you guys send me. And if you learned something today, hit that like button. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you're new, consider subscribing, because I'm going to be making some more stuff in the future. I'll see you next time.